We encounter HTML forms in our daily life very often, like signing up to a social media platform or logging into a Twitter account or Facebook account or Instagram account with an email ID password. Everything is actually a HTML form, designed in HTML form. So here you are expected to fill in your email ID or phone number and enter password and click login. These details will be collected on the UI and be sent to server. Server validates the credentials and sends back the response to the client. And client will validate the response and take you to the home page. That's how it works. So form's main purpose is to collect the information that is entered on the UI and send it to a server or a processing entity. So let's look at form, how form looks in HTML. So this is a form tag, and the action attribute is actually a location where you want to send your form, something like this. So maybe login.php or whatever the location that you want to send it to. And then what is the method? So method is another attribute that you can send it as a get request or post request. So there are different types of HTTP requests, hypertext transfer protocols, that is HTTP stands for. So there are different methods this HTTP work on. So that is post and get. Let us understand these methods more in a different video. So for now, let us consider it as a get request. And this is a form now. There is nothing on the form because we have declared a form and we said where it needs to take the information and what is the method that it should take the information. But what is the information it should take to the server or a backend entity? Now that we need to define. So let us say we want to create a username field. First we want to create a label. So label basically a UI indication that what field it is. So username. If you save this, you will be seeing just a text, so nothing else, no fancy thing again. So it's just a HTML tag to hold that information, and then input. Input is one element that will take into different forms of inputs and collect the information from user. So for now we are looking at text type. So input will close on its own, so it's a self-closing tag, and if I save it, this is how it looks. So you can have a placeholder like an instruction for the user to what to do on that input, saying enter user name. So you really need to indicate the user that what information should go in here. So with this code I'm able to, if I want to submit, I need a button here, right? So input type, there is another type called submit. Submit is another type which actually makes this form submitted. So let's say I have this information, and if I submit the action, the form will submit that information to login.php. So you can see it here. So it's trying to send in some parameters, that is this information. How should that information go in the URL? Because we need to have some names to the controls. So if I say name and if I enter like this, this particular portion is called route parameters. So the form values that are entered in the previous page are actually going in the form of request parameters. It says name equal to, so if you change this name to username, save it, go back to the page, add some username and submit, you see the username value is Neghani. And same way you can create a password. So you rename this and you change the type to password. Remember I said the input tag itself takes many forms of inputs, but all you need to do is change this attribute name, the type attribute name. If you see this list, okay, you could see many different options for that attribute. So if it is button, if you want a button, it can become a button. If you want it, so we will go through of each of the type. So for now it is password. As soon as you put the type to password, and I haven't changed the name, password, and say enter password. Now my password is this. The password is not visible, right? So password should not be visible. So if you, as soon as you said the type to password, the text that is being entered in this field is hidden. So if I submit, now you see the information is going. So there are different ways securely sending this information to the server, because we don't want to expose our password or username. But if you change this method to post, okay, the information still goes in a different form by not exposing information. The post method will not expose the data in URL, but sends the data to the destination of that particular request. So if you say get, all this form information will go in route params, or if you set it to post, it will actually send this information in request body. So unfortunately we don't have a backend entity for this to demo how the post method work, but you will see in future videos I will be able to show it to you how the request of post actually reaches the backend entity. That is what about form. Like, you can send the information with the different methods. This is how you should structure. Even if you don't have a label, it doesn't matter, it still submits the data, but for the user's indication it is always better to have a label. And you can put some inputs like this and name them properly, not to have any duplicates or something, because always you have to keep these names independently. So if you did this like this, the second information will be overridden. So we don't want to do that. We just want always these names should be different. Okay, so totally how many forms this input can take into? So it can take into different inputs like checkbox, radio button. So in the form of radio, let's say gender, let's collect the gender. Okay, so you can say radio, and it doesn't really matter if we have a placeholder for radio button, because placeholder on radio button doesn't make any sense, because we can keep the placeholder but it doesn't really make any sense. Okay, so now you can say value. So what is the value of that particular radio? So if I'm selecting gender, if I'm asking the gender, okay, I can say one male, now you are seeing these three radio buttons, but you don't know which button is for what. So you again have to support these guys by a label. You can put it like this: male, now the name for this three fields should be the same, because we want to capture one value, that is gender. I actually didn't change this gender, but the value should be either male, female, or others. You need to keep the name same for that radio. If I select female, male is actually unchecked. If I select others, female is unchecked. That is because the name is same. One property cannot hold different values. So when finally if I am sending it, this is actually needs to be get method for us to see the values on URL. So username is empty, password empty, but we haven't entered anything, but the value we selected for gender was other. So that's how the value captures. So if I can submit it like this: username is empty, password is empty, gender is female, because we selected female. So we can make this required also, because if this is required, you can have this attribute called required, and this form doesn't submits until you fill in that information that is required. Actually, this autofill is actually displaying unnecessarily, because let's put the autocomplete to false off, so that it will not actually disturb us. So now you could clearly see, if I submit, it says please fill in the details, because I have kept this required attribute here on this. So if I am submitting, it will now submit because I have actually satisfied the condition. Now same way I can keep this, make this gender also required, keep it on all the things. Now if I submit, it asks for, so now it says please select one of these options. So now when the condition is met, everything is actually sent to backend. Now let's look at checkbox. For this scenario, let us pick the education input, and I want input type checkbox, and it is required, and the value should be there are different probabilities for education qualification, because I may completed school, I may also have completed college, so there are different criteria. So I just want to allow the user to check many as he can college, and I want to label them, because so if I come back and if I see, qualification is actually coming up, but I am not labeling these information properly. So I should say school and college. Okay, save it, school and college. Let's see if it is being submitted. Okay, these are required now. If I submit, qualification is college. You can see the qualification information is actually being sent. We can actually style these guys even better like this. We can use the Fieldset element like this. We can say the legend, we can keep this in the legend. And have this information in below the legend, like everything here. Formatted this. Now you could see this is looking good. Let's do the same for the rest of the controls. So I just want to copy this, go over here, and I want to call this as user information. I guess this is user information. So I move this in here, and if I save this, this is not gender, I have to rename user info. So if you see, I created a field set that is giving me this nice little box, and the legend that I keep here is actually coming over here, and rest of the things are same, like label and input and label input. We still need this label and input because that indicates the individual fields, like what is this field about, what is this field about. So I actually need to move this to field set legend, and then what is this legend? Qualification, and then I can remove this label because this is for school and this is for college. So next up is the select input. So which state you belong to. I might ask the user which state he belong to. So I can say label state, say select. So I can have a name for this select, that is state, and I can move to the next line. I can give different options to that user. Options is another element. that each option will have a value, because value can be a something and label can be something like this. Let's say value can be Assam, ASM, and value can be Assam. So if you see state, now there is only one option, it is coming up here, but I can have another option with value 0, and I can say this is already selected, and I can check this. I can put it like this: please choose state. So this is now a default selection that is happening. I can give as many selections as I want. So if I move this to here, like say this is not Assam, this is Meghalaya. Since this selected attribute present on Meghalaya, the default item that is selected here is Meghalaya. So I can move this here, and we can see this is being selected, the value is null, and I can make this required to. And the same way I can check something by default, like I can go, if ever I wanted to keep something already checked, that I don't want the user to confirm me unless he wants to change it, I can just put a attribute like this, checked, and it will be automatically selected. So if I'm expecting my users at least to be past school, so if they are coming over here, I'm expecting everybody to pass school, so I can just select this by default like this. So one thing I missed to address, I can keep on giving these options here so that user can make a selection. So I can put this in a div whatever the way I want. So I'm formatting this. For a while, let's focus on the input element, because we covered lot other things, but we haven't really seen how many different types of input elements we can create with this tag. So let's focus on that for a while and continue with our list. So there are different elements that you can generate out of this input type. We have seen text, password, radio, and checkbox, but there are plenty. I may not use, in my use case I don't have that control need, but you need to aware that this many are the controls that you can create, and every element is unique. So if I say color, this gives me a color picker. Okay, and what else we have? What different kinds of, it can also be button, because I said on the button required field is not required. If I said button, it will create a button, and the value could be anything that you assign here, something like this. The same tag is actually taking different forms in. So this becomes a date controller, and you can set min date, max date. For the date, we can keep the values like this, like what is a day. We can set a day to select automatically, and we can set a min date or a max date. You could actually see something like this. My apologies, the date actually getting deprecated. I should use date local attribute value. Now you could see that a particular value has been selected already from 2008 12/6/2008 7:30 p.m. and there is a min date and max date as I passed here. So I passed a min and max, and the control understood that this is the minimum date and this is the maximum date that it can allow. So I'm not able to select anything before or beyond the dates. Email is another control. Email doesn't have a min data, max data or anything. It's just an email. It's just a text control. So here you don't see any difference that but it understands, the browser understands this is an email component and giving me email suggestions. Same way, if you open this in a mobile, the keyboard, right keyboard will be displayed against each kind of attribute. So it's important, even if it is not making any sense on desktop, it will make sense a lot in, if you use URL or text or tele. Based on these types, the mobile keyboard will changes the layout. So it's important that we tag the input with the right property. So range is one another property, because you will get this range. So the change event will trigger what is the range here. Like If I am dragging it here, it is 50%, it says 50, 60, 80 and 100. So you can observe this. Let me give a demo. On change, console.log, this dot value, and if I look at in the log, see, so on change event typically present in all the elements. You can subscribe on that, and or you can listen on that event change, and you can get the value for all the controls. So we've looked at these instances, and we will look these events in the JavaScript training a lot. So I think I went over little over top on this control, but be sure to check out the different types of these controls. The single element takes a lot of forms, and I can provide a cheat sheet in the description, and you can go through with the cheat sheet and understand all different kinds of possibilities with this input field. Let's move on. Let us understand one more control, that is you can actually group these options like this. So optgroup is another tag that will group these tags, and you can label these art groups like this. I can say label Eastern States, or Northern States, North States, something like Bihar, BH, UP. So you would see that like this, the division, the grouping in the options like this. This tag will actually enable you to do so. So Textarea is one other component. This tag will give you a control like this. Actually, you can set a columns and rows, calls to 5 and rows to 10, and you will see that style or that size being taken there. So you can say 20, so it is actually taking 20 columns width, so maybe 50. So if I want this to be coming in a new line, I can say BR, and this form takes a new line. If you want some calculated value or some selected value to be printed on the page itself, you can use this output. So for is another attribute that we need to know, because if I need to specifically click on these items to select, right? But the for attribute changes this behavior. So basically I can put a label here like this. For label, I can say for school, and make this, I can take this value and go ahead and create an ID with the same value for this control. Now by clicking on this label itself, it changes the control also, so I can do the same thing here. Next is the Datalist control. So Datalist control gives you a ability to choose from it. So it's like more or less similar like select, but you would see here I have a label, choose a flavor, and this is my input. The type is text anyway, and that list is, so I've created a data list, same with options, with multiple options, value in them, and I can copy the value to here also. But even if I don't keep, it will actually pop up, tend to have the same value in the as a label also. So I can do it like this. So this is my data list, and this is my ID, and I can copy this ID and say list, and the list value to be the ID of that particular data list. Now if I come here, so now this clicking on this drop down menu, you can see that different options that you created on this list, and if you can go ahead and pick one, and it will pick one. You can do the same with select to, but you really cannot search for this, because if I wanted chocolate, I can search chocolate, something you couldn't do it on a select. So this is one more control that you need to know. That's it for this video. I think I have covered plenty of controls. So if I missed anything, please do feel free to comment. Thanks for watching. Please do subscribe.